Welcome back to American Agenda. I'm Heather Childers along with Bob Sellers. You know, election experts are saying that Vice President Mike Pence could go rogue when Congress counts the electoral votes on January 6th. Some conservatives argue that the vice president has unique powers to actually reject state election results. A professor at Ohio State University said this. He said there's talk the Congress is supposed to sit in judgment of whether the states conducted their elections legally. Now, it's been suggested, as we just said, that Mike Pence, in fact, has the unilateral authority to reject whole slates of electors based on language in the 12th Amendment. So could Pence go rogue, and is that true? And so I will toss it over to our attorney who is on board. What do you think?
Hi, Heather.
Hi.
I don't think so. I don't think that there's anything in the 12th Amendment that gives the president of the Senate, which would be the sitting vice president, or Mike Pence in this instance, that kind of power, nor is there anything in the congressional statute, the Electoral Count Act, which was passed in 1876 or 1877, I think it's 1877, that would do so. In fact, that statute is very clear that it's a ministerial role that the presiding officer in the Senate would play, in this case, by Mike Pence. His job would only be to open the envelopes with the certificates. Then he would hand them to these designated individuals who are called tellers, who would then call out what the vote is and count them. And then after they've counted them, they would return back to the vice president, who would then announce what the vote is. Now, if at any point in time you have a congressman and a senator who object to either one or more electoral votes, then they have to recess and they have to go back to their respective chambers, deliberate for 2 hours, and vote on that objection.
And that's a question, though. I mean, and that's what we were just discussing in the break. What happens then if, you know, because there are reports that there are some senators, at least 3, that are considering coming on board with, we already know the documented congressmen that are going to object. If they go out, they deliberate for 2 hours, they come back in and they decide to reject the electors, then what?
Well, if you have a simple majority in either house that agrees to reject the electors, and you'll need a majority in both houses in order to do it, then Mike Pence's role would simply be to sustain that objection, and those electors would be struck. So those electors would not count. Now, that would not change the fact that you would still need to get 270 electors in the majority. This is what the 12th Amendment talks about, that you need a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, which would be 270. So if you strike enough electors to bring Joe Biden down from his presumptive 306 to under 270, then neither candidate would have that majority. And under the 12th Amendment, it would then go to the House of Representatives for a vote by each state would get 1 vote. And that's what the 12th Amendment prescribes to happen in that circumstance.
Amanda, as our Republican strategist, do you think that this is a wise strategy?
So I would just say that, you know, really, I think this is more in the hands of House members and Senate members. Heather, you mentioned a couple of senators. I know Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, Rand Paul. There's been open discussion about this. And, you know, as someone who worked on Capitol Hill for over a decade, I would just say that there certainly is a lot to be said about what your constituents want. And if your constituents are coming to you and, you know, calling your office and seeing you over the holidays, they're going to be filling your ear with exactly how they feel. And this certainly is a divisive issue. So I think let's wait and see what happens when members of Congress come back from their Christmas recess and see what their temperature is. But I really think that this falls with House members. Of course, we know Mo Brooks of Alabama has taken a stance on this. But if a senator does, as we discussed, you know, there's a procedure, a simple majority, and basically, I think it's really more unclear what happens after that, only because it's never happened. The last time this happened was in 2004 when Barbara Boxer and a House member from Ohio objected to this. Okay. So really, we don't have any precedent with this. So some say this will go back to the governors to actually decide.
Yeah.
So
let me get Christina in here, though. Christina, what role should the Democrats be playing, if any, in trying to restore faith in our election system while all this is going on?
I think the Democrats are doing exactly what they can. You see President-elect Biden, and I say that purposely, President-elect Biden, who's got the majority of the popular vote and who has now won the Electoral College with over 306 votes. Is trying to project his leadership, a steady leadership, a calculated leadership. And determined. And I'm finally now relieved to see Senator McConnell, who, I might be a Democrat, but I can respect that he is the shrewdest and probably savviest senator in that United States body. And now he has finally said that this is the president-elect and that he is discouraging his members from partaking in this, as it is ripping away at the core of our foundations. And so I recognize that some folks may not be happy with how this has turned out, but this is the will of the people with 78 million votes. And this is and he's won the majority of the states, and he's won the Electoral College, and we need to settle in now.
Do you think that President-elect Biden will be treated the same way that President Trump was treated the 4 years of his administration, and his administration will be constantly called into question as a result of this? Or do you think the media and the loudest voices will just try to get everyone to be quiet?
I think it certainly is possible. I mean, it has been a terrible 4 years, in my opinion. I feel like we have been tearing at each other from both sides, and both parties play a role in that, absolutely. And I'm fearful that we'll spend another 4 years doing it, and then another 4 years doing it again. I feel like in this pandemic, this was really a moment where there's an actual enemy for us all to unite against, and we haven't been able to do that. And so I hope that it won't be the case, but it certainly is possible, probably likely. So yes, I'm still just as nervous about that.
Yeah. What do you think, Bob?
I think the Electoral College is the kind of the last place that actually any decision making. The way the founders set it up is if people made a bad decision, the Electoral College members would actually decide, they don't know enough to make that decision. It's kind of obsolete. Because people know what's going on now, and then over 30 states now require them to vote as their states voted. And the January 6th, we may see some fireworks, but I think the end is.
It's been a good history lesson, though. We've learned a lot about government.
Well, it comes in handy this year, especially.
Absolutely.
That's why we have Amir here also.
Well, we're going to get back to our. Go ahead, Amir.
No, I was going to say that every single time that there have been objections to a slate of electors, it has been from the Democrats. It hasn't been from the Republicans. Starting back in 1877 to 1969 to 2001 to 2005. And when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, the Democrats did it again. Republicans haven't objected. So this is the law. This is the Electoral Count Act that Congress passed. It provides for this contingency. So there's the Democrats didn't cry foul when they did it all those times. Nobody said it was a coup when they did it those times. So for the Republicans to be doing it this time, they shouldn't have any, they shouldn't have any
right to go through the process. I think that's what we're going through the process, Amir. I think you're right. I think the only question now some people have, was there fraud? Do we examine that? Could that change things here? That's news that we're following, but the process we've been following it, and he is president-elect, just so you know, Christina, we are referring to him as President-elect Biden. All right, we'll talk more in just a few moments. Also, this time that we remind you about our app. Back in the day when you used to watch TV, that was one way to watch it, but now the TV goes wherever you are. In fact, a lot of people are getting rid of it, they're cutting the cord anyway and taking things like the Newsmax TV app with them so that they can watch that. You can watch us anywhere, on the go, on your Android phone, on your iPhone, whatever your device might be. The nice thing is it's free. You don't have to pay subscription as you do typically to get on board with, to get online with the other major cable networks. 100% free, and that's the way millions of people are discovering our app, discovering us, to be honest, also on OTT devices. Probably takes less than a minute. Head over to the Apple Store, the App Store, whether it's an Apple or Android, and download the Newsmax TV app. It's one of the most downloaded free apps in the Apple Store. Head on over. We think that you will like it. And we will be back with more of American Agenda after this.